What's going on, my fellow Jedi and Padawans? Welcome back to another Jedi gaming video. Thank you guys so much for coming back to the channel, and if you guys are new, welcome. Only a few weeks left until the wonderful final shape comes out with some crazy new abilities in Prismatic. We're gonna have a lot to go over with all of that, but before all of that comes out, we got a couple more builds for y'all, as well as some of my favorite builds that we are going to take into the final shape for sure. But this one right here is a Strand Titan build using the Precious Scar helmet for that Onslaught mode to get yourself through those level 50s in normal, as well as that legendary version. So we are going to be able to get restoration on this build, as well as Banner of War. So it is a support plus damage menace, so we are going to cover everything for you, especially starting us off right here with the Kitsugi. It is the straight on top of the Precious Scar, so final blows with weapons matching the damage type of our subclass create a burst of that healing around you that grants us that restoration, not for only us but for our fellow guardians as well. After reviving or being revived, we also get an overshield that is provided to us and our nearby allies, so it is the perfect way to keep yourself alive in Onslaught. Spread that support around, and it is just part of this build, and it feels so good to have that proc, especially with Banner of War. So starting us out right here, we got our stats as well as our mods. I built this out for the resilience, discipline, and strength as heavily as I could. Doesn't have to be triple 100s or anything, but I would definitely focus on your resilience first. For me, I went with strength next for Banner of War and just Strand Titan in general. So for me, we're going to go with Harmonic Siphon on this, as well as Special Ammo Finder with Powerful Friends, so we can create orbs of power with our strand weapons, plus the healing from our Precious Scars. Spread that orb of power around for that armor charge with our fellow guardians, and then we're going to use this obviously for our ammo. Now we're going to use double momentum transfer to get our grenade back a little bit faster when we cause damage with that nice frenzied blade, as well as heavy-handed to help create even more orbs of power for us to help us get our super, as well as use what's on our legs. Now I am going to go with Harmonic Reserve. You could change this to something along the lines of another solar resistance, another void resistance, totally up to you, but I liked having a little bit of extra ammo inside of my heavies. And then we got Innervation on this, so we can get our grenade back every time we pick up those orbs of power, plus that strand weapon surge, so both our heavy as well as our kinetic are going to get a nice 17% damage increase when we have that armor charge, which we're getting from all the orbs of power from Harmonic Siphon, as well as heavy-handed. Plus Reaper down here will give us even more of those after we throw down our barricade, with Bomber giving us a little bit of that nice grenade energy when we use our class ability, with that time dilation helping us to keep the effects of the double strand weapon surge up even longer, allowing us to really proc and take full advantage of Precious Scar. Now when we move on to weapons, we are going to be using the trusty dusty Quicksilver Storm. We're going to have that like nano tracer rockets on it with its original trait right here for landing those precision shots, or just landing shots in general, I should say. With when we do get those rockets to actually proc and then shoot and hit somebody, we are going to get a nice little grenade that procs, where we can change our setting, shoot that out. It does do its strand burst as well, so unraveling rounds, etc. works with this, so it is a very good add clear weapon, plus with the tracers that we have on it, and its strand because of its catalyst, so it's going to proc our Precious Scars super easily. Now we're going to be using Indebted Kindness on this build for the beacon round volt shot on this. We're going to be using that for anti-barrier, Quicksilver Storm for our overloads, plus this thing is disgusting in Onslaught, gives us the ability for those champions, plus having it be a special ammo sidearm with those rocket assisted frames, it does a good amount of damage. As for our two heavies, go with Circular Logic right here with that Nano Tracer rockets for Hatchling, as well as Envious for that strand synergy. Very good for the ad clear side of things, even sometimes in that boss room. Very good to just keep all those ads at bay. Plus when we got our 17% increase, it is a nice little bit of extra damage on it. But if you are looking strictly for that damage on those boss waves, whatever it might be, Reconstruction Frenzy right here on this Corexis Distress is very good with that boss spec. Gives us a good juicy amount of damage when we got our Strand Surges, plus Boss Spec, plus Frenzy going, so definitely a juicer magooser for that DPS. Onto our artifact with the Queen's Foil Sensor, we're going to be using our armor-piercing sidearms as well, obviously, for that anti-barrier, plus the Overload Auto Rifle for our Quicksilver Storm. Now, since this is super heavy on our solar weapons as well as solar abilities, I really only went with Torch just in case we get Radiant from one of our fellow Guardians. We are still going to have that increased damage of our weapons against affected combatants by Strand or Stasis, so it will be a possibility with our fellow Guardians. Not personally, you won't be able to make yourself Radiant, but still an option. Now, I just threw on these bottom 5 down here because, like I said, almost everything else is tailored to solar, so we're going to get the origin traits of Nano Munitions, Nano Trace Rockets, as well as over here that Noble Deeds, Unsatiated, Head Rush, Dragon's Vengeance, all going to get a little bit of buff, which this one also is nice, creating more of those orbs of power when our super is almost fully charged. We really don't deal with Taken or Scorn inside of Onslaught, so not that big of a deal, but Dragon's Bite right here, as well as those top 2, is really what we are looking for, because we have the potential to suspend targets when we break them with our 2 strand weapons, as well as up here is we are picking up those orbs of power that we're literally getting everywhere with this build. Our weapons, our class ability, as well as our melee is going to give us that unraveling rounds, which is just an absolute menace for Onslaught, things that have just a lot of adds close together, as well as that Horde Shuffle, creating even more threadlings and that Strand synergy when we damage all the unraveling targets that we get from here with the unraveling orbs. So most importantly on this, definitely these 2, as well as your Dragon's Bite, plus obviously your Overload Auto and Piercing Sidearm. Last but certainly not least, right here we got our abilities, aspects, and fragments with our Blade Fury getting that suspend and sever, as well as the nice damage, plus with the ability to suspend on this build with our grenade as well as our super, we're going to be able to stop that 3rd champion type in Unstoppable. So this build is able to do just a little bit of everything: DPS, all of our champions, as well as all of that healing. Personally, I like Towering Barricade, but totally up to you. This comes back a lot faster with Rally. I like Strafe Lift, but again, jumps are totally a personal preference. We got our Frenzied Blade, which is going to be super nice with severing those enemies, as well as, like I said, with our armor mods, we're going to be creating orbs of power with this and getting our grenade back because of that impact. So we're going to be using shackle grenades on this build to complement that suspend. Unstoppable champions plus suspended targets give us tangles with this build, which we are using as well. Now, of course, we're going to be using Banner of War. Like I said earlier, pairing this with Precious Scars is some of the best healing inside of the game, besides obviously standing inside like a Well of Radiance or something like that. But defeating targets with a melee, finisher, or sword grants us that Banner of War that pulses energy, periodically healing us and nearby allies, increasing our melee and sword damage. Targets that you or allies defeat while they are nearby inside of that banner also charge it, increasing the speed of its pulses, so we get this stacked up pretty far ×4. And that restoration from Precious Scars, the healing is almost endless, it feels like, plus our melee gets a little bit of extra juice, and it is a good way, once you get this to proc, to do even more damage with your super. Now on top of that, we're going to be using Dranger's Lash, so activating our class ability allows us to create a ripple in the ground with that strand energy that also suspends targets. So not only with our class ability and our grenade and our super, we're going to be able to suspend those targets. So it is a good tangle spam, as well as that unstoppable champions. Like I said, we're going to be using our Overload Auto, our anti-barrier sidearm, and then suspend for overloads via those 3 things. Now when we move on to fragments, very important right here for sure, threat of generation. So when we deal damage, we get grenade energy. This definitely allows us to spam our shackle grenade or whatever grenade you have on very often, in my opinion, when you are using Strand. So one of the best Strand fragments in general. On top of that, we're going to be using Thread of Warding, so picking up all those orbs of power that we are creating via our melee, via Reaper, via our weapons, are going to help us to give us that Woven Mail, which will keep us safe with that reduction in damage from non-precision damage specifically, just adding to the survivability of this build with Banner of War plus restoration from our Precious Scars. Next Next off, while we have Woven Mail, weapon final blows create tangles, so like I said, even more tangles flowing because of Thread of Mutation, with all of the suspended targets that we're getting also giving us tangles. It is a very good little strand synergy. And then of course our Thread of Continuity, so suspend, unravel, sever, flex, applied, last even longer, and we are going to get all three of these very easily. Orbs of Power giving us that unravel from our weapons, suspend with a couple different things, our grenade as well as our ability in our shield, and then that sever from our super as well as our melee ability. So this build is absolutely juiced for the Onslaught mode, or just in general for anything in the PvE realm with a Strand Titan. They are very powerful. Plus this build gives us Banner of War for healing, as well as Precious Scars and all that restoration that we're getting on top of it with those defeats. So it is a add clear menace, add prevention menace, a very good support build. And then with that Banner of War procced plus your super, you can actually do some pretty crazy damage on those bosses, mini bosses, champions. So this build is S tier in my opinion. Definitely can take this into normal Onslaught, hard, legendary Onslaught, so definitely give this a try. Like I said, maybe got one or two more specific builds coming out, and then we're gonna cover for sure some of my favorite builds from this season and just old seasons that I'm gonna be taking into the final shape with me that I think everybody should be trying out, especially since it's gonna take us, I'm assuming, a little bit to get Prismatic fully unlocked. But if it is as broken as I think it's going to be absolutely bonkers. So thank you guys again for that continued support. Truly appreciate all you guys for coming back to the channel. Don't be afraid to slap that bell, like the video, also subscribe. Helps me out quite a bit here on the channel, and it'll make sure you guys don't miss out on any of these guides here, any of our builds for our weapons with its perks. So, and the news that we got in the final shape coming up is going to be absolutely nutty. So again, appreciate all you guys. I will catch y'all in the next one. Peace.